to the start of another week, everybody. So glad you've joined me for today's devotion. We're continuing our read through the book of 1 Samuel in chapter 12 this morning. So hope you've already read this chapter. And man, this chapter is just filled with so many things that I like, that spoke to me, that I could talk for a long time about. I won't do that, but I really liked this chapter. One of the things that jumped out at me in the beginning of the chapter is how it's apparent that Samuel was now advanced in years, had been a prophet for quite some time, a judge, if you will, and he was finishing well. In the first 5 verses, he challenges the people. Have I stolen from you? Have I defrauded anyone? Have I taken a bribe and therefore didn't do what was just? And the people say, no, Samuel, you have integrity. And he says, so you swear that before God? And they said, yes. So Samuel was finishing well, and I think he is a model for all of us in leadership, in ministry, all of us just as disciples, as men and women of God, to finish well. And that means we have to be determined all along the way to do what is right and to treat people right, to be godly, to have integrity. And if we do that, we will finish well. His reputation was intact at the end. And my heart breaks when I think about people who mess up along the way and don't finish well, or they do well for so long and get near the end of their journey and then they blow it. And that's just so heartbreaking. A second thing in this chapter that really spoke to me was he kind of reiterates for them the fact that they disobeyed God when asking for a king. It wasn't God's will or plan for them, and God gave them what they wanted. We've talked about that a lot last week, but in verse 12, when you saw that Nahash, the king of the sons of Ammon, came against you, you said to me, no, but a king shall reign over us, although the Lord our God, your God, was your king. And, when we looked at that last week in the earlier chapters, this was not mentioned. It was that they were tired of, like, Eli's sons, and then Samuel's sons, who would be the successors to Eli and Samuel, not being godly men. They were tired of bad leadership. They wanted to be like everybody else. But now we're told that one of the factors that really drove that home was they were facing the challenge of another nation and that nation's king, and rather than turning to and trusting God, they wanted a king. So we get more insight into what was really motivating them, and God gave them what they wanted, even though it was the wrong thing. So just because God lets you have something, it doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's best. Doesn't mean it's what God has for you, His plan for you. And then a third thing in verses 21 and following is that for me, Samuel is a model, not only of finishing well, but a model of what good leadership really looks like, especially from God's perspective, if you will. He lived with integrity, as we talked about earlier, but he also told the people the truth, even if it wasn't popular, what they wanted to hear, and he continued to genuinely pray for them. Look at verses 21 and following. He's at the end of his life. He's already introduced now Saul to them as their new king in violation of what God wanted, and he's laying down a challenge to them one last time, and he says, you must not turn aside, for then, if you do, you will go after futile things which cannot profit or deliver because they are futile. For the Lord will not abandon his people on account of his great name, because the Lord has been pleased to make you a people for himself. I said one day last week that God blesses us sometimes. Sometimes he chooses to bless us even when we're out of his will. And that's what he's talking about here. So don't always take the blessing of God and good things happening in your life as a sign that God totally approves of or is happy with everything you're doing. That may not be the case. Verse 23, moreover, as for me, Samuel referring to himself, far be it from me that I should sin against the Lord by ceasing to pray for you, but I will instruct you in the good and right way. So he says, I'm going to tell you the truth, the right things, the thing you need to hear, even if it's not what you want to hear. And even when you disobey and you're obstinate, stubborn, and sinful and rebellious, I'm still going to tell you the truth, but I'm never going to stop praying for you. I'm never going to stop praying for you. And I think Samuel's a model for all of us. And he's not saying that in some kind of casual way, hey, I'm going to pray for you. He meant it. He loved them and he prayed for them even when they were messed up. And there's a lot there for us. The other thing that spoke to me, and I won't belabor it, is what I preached on yesterday in verses 14 and 15 about how important it is to really listen to God if we're going to follow him. In fact, you cannot follow God if you don't listen to him. And if you say, oh, I'm a Christian, and yeah, I'm following Jesus, and I'm following God, but you don't ever listen to him, you're lying to yourself. Following God means you listen to him and do what he says. Well, those are some of the thoughts that I had after reading this chapter. I really liked it. I hope you did as well. And tomorrow we'll continue our reading through the book of 1 Samuel by looking at chapter 15. Hey, God bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow.